Welcome everyone to the Fourth Dimension, big book study that is. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Welcome. Glad you guys are all here. We will start, as we always do, with the set-aside prayer. Which goes like this. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, and the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. Okay, and as this is the Fourth Dimension Big Book Study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the Fourth Dimension. On page 8, Bill Wilson writes, I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. We are going to be catapulted. We are going to be rocketed. Let's do it. And for the sake of tradition, for the sake of custom, everyone who will, please put one hand up like this. Oh, James is ahead of me. James knows exactly what's coming. Everybody put another hand up like this. I'm waiting until everybody does it. And we go, oh, yeah. Okay. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you guys are here. Let's talk very briefly. If I may, Rob, I know you were just talking about that book, The Writing of the Big Book. Okay. And for anyone who's interested, I just want to share my thoughts on that book briefly, because that book almost wrecked me, if I'm honest. That book was, I first became accustomed to that book at the State Line Conference in Las Vegas, and I started to read that book, and it was very disturbing for me, very disturbing. And I met with a historian there, and man, he laid out the history of AA for me in a way that I had not heard before and wasn't particularly interested in hearing. And it was very troublesome for me. And I'll be honest, I couldn't leave my hotel room for like an afternoon and early evening. I had to talk to my sponsor and a bunch of people. I was really, really shook that the history, the beautiful history of Alcoholics Anonymous as I had been taught it, the story of Christmas, if you will, was exaggerated, embellished, so on and so forth. Okay, that rocked my world, and very, very problematic for me. There is a great AA speaker by the name of Steve Lamb, and Steve Lamb at the State Line Conference that night, I won't say he saved my life, but he made my day a lot better. I'll tell you that. And I want to share it with you. I want to share it with you, Rob, and anyone else who might be reading that book, The Writing of the Big Book, where a guy who's a PhD and not even a member of AA does his like PhD dissertation and getting into the nuts and bolts of exactly what happened and who exactly was what, when, and where it all happened. You know, I talked to Steve Lamb about it, and I said, Steve, I'm really shook about this book, The Writing of the Big Book. Like, you know, it's telling me like all the stuff with like Ebby and Bill and Roland Hazard and Hank Parkhurst and all this stuff like didn't happen the way that I've been taught and the way that I've been teaching. That was the other thing. I was kind of embarrassed. I've been teaching it for like 15 years. And I will never forget what Steve, in fact, I had a phone call with Steve just the other day where I thanked him again for that call. And what I said for when we met at State Line, I called him to thank him for that. And what he said was, Kevin, there may be factual truths about Alcoholics Anonymous that we are not aware of, but the spiritual truth about the history of Alcoholics Anonymous will never change. And that was good enough for me, because I am choosing to believe that Santa Claus is real. Okay. And look, I was talking to one of my sponsees about this. Santa Claus is real. Santa Claus is real in the heart of every little 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old child. Santa Claus is real. And the story of Alcoholics Anonymous as I learned it, as I fell in love with it, as I have helped other people to fall in love with it, the way that I was taught, that is real because it exists in my heart, and that's good enough for me. Anyway, I wanted to share that, Rob. I saw you talking there about the history, the writing of the big book. I think that book is dangerous, frankly. I don't think newcomers should read that book. I don't think anyone in like their first year is ready for that book. Yeah. That's what I mean. When I say it's dangerous, Rob, I mean, I want my sponsees just to learn the history, the early history, just the way I learned it, man, in that beautiful, beautiful way that I was taught by Clancy originally, and then by many others. So you unmuted, Rob. Did you want to say anything about it?
Well, the only thing I will say about that, Kevin, is that the most important thing is that sobriety. And here we are here to achieve sobriety and to get to get a higher power in order to alleviate us of that and to get a whole new life. Writing of the big book is something that is interesting to people that have been in the fellowship, I think, for quite a while, a little bit of time, and that want to learn about some of the history. History is not going to keep us sober. This big book is the program, and that's what we should be looking at. So as I said, history is something that it's great to know, but it's not going to keep me sober. So
I agree with you wholeheartedly. One of the things that I will say to that, though, is like, before I came to believe in God, I had to come to believe in a couple other things. The first thing I had to come to believe in is that I needed help. And I had to come to believe that my situation was hopeless. That's the first thing I had to come to believe.
Powerless.
I had to come to believe I was powerless. And then at a certain level, I came to believe that y'all had a solution that I didn't have. Okay, I'm not saying I was ready to get down on my knees and start praying to God, but I had to come to believe that AA had something that I didn't have. And I came to believe in Alcoholics Anonymous. And a lot, for me, one of the moments that I fell in love with AA is when I heard that early history of AA. Just the way that I've taught it. If any of you have ever heard me do the foundation meeting, or anything like that, it's that's the early history of AA, man, and it's what I love. And anyway, I just saw that book, and I just wanted to just mention that for anyone who reads that book and gets rocked. What I really wanted to share is that line from Steve Lamb. It was beautiful. The factual truth of AA may be something that we're not entirely aware of, but the spiritual truth of Alcoholics Anonymous will never change. And the spiritual truth of AA lives in here with me right now. Okay, you guys, so we're going to do steps 5, 6, and 7 tonight. And we'll finish reading through step 5. And then I want to share with you guys my experience, not just in doing my step 5. I shared about that a little bit last week, but I want to share my experience in receiving step 5s. Okay. And I want to remind everyone again, because I haven't talked about this for a while, the transition that every alcoholic needs to make in order to achieve recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous is I needed to make a transition from being a... Can anybody tell me what's the transition? Can anybody tell me? I know you can't, Zachary. That's okay. You look good, clean shaven though, Zachary. You look good. You look good, man. You look good. Anyway, can anybody tell me what's the transition every alcoholic needs to make in Alcoholics Anonymous?
Higher psychic change.
Well, we do need to make a psychic change, but so this is like foundational to this entire big book study. Okay, this is something that I learned from Chuck Chamberlain. Okay, transition that I needed to make in AA is from being a taker to a giver. Okay, that's the transition I need to make in AA, from being a taker to being a giver. And always in this particular study, guys, I always want you to be mindful of the fact that this is the transition that we're making. And every time that we're going through something, so like, we just finished going through step 4. I want you always to be thinking about, okay, how can I take what I've just learned in step 4 and how am I going to remind myself when it's time for me to sit down with the sponsee and teach them how to do step 4. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about step 5. We'll finish the reading in step 5. And then I'm going to share with you my experience in listening to step 5s, like my sponsees step 5s and other step 5s from other people. You know, I've listened to lots of them. We talked about this last week. I want to talk to you about actually how I functionally do that, because I think there's some helpful things to say about it, because I want you guys always to be thinking not just of your own step 5, but I'll tell you that some of the most spiritual moments I've had in my life were sitting and listening to step 5s. Some of the step 5s of, you know, some of the people on this call, I've heard their step 5. If anybody wants to know anything about it, just come and ask me. I'll tell you whatever you need. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Okay. There, that got a couple laughs. All right, there you go. Okay, so Vincent, where's my man? There he is. Brad's not here tonight, Vincent. How would you like to be a reader for us?
Hi, Kevin. That sounds great to me.
All right, buddy. That's awesome. So let's start with well, we talked, so I think we've finished. So we're at notwithstanding the great necessity. Page 74, everyone. Page 74, notwithstanding the great necessity.
Okay. Vince Alcoholic.
Hi, Vince.
Notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. If that is so, this step may be postponed. Only, however, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity. We say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person. It is important that he be able to keep a confidence that he fully understand and approve what we are driving at, that he will not try to change our plan, but we must not use this mere excuse to postpone. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory and we are prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. He should realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand. Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence.
Okay, so once again, we've talked about this. Yeah, thanks, Vince. We've talked about this before. We're always reading the Big Book in context, right? Big Book was written April 10th. It was published April 10th, 1939. It goes out in the world. And at that time, you may be but one person with nothing more than a copy of this book in your hand. That's it. By yourself in the middle of, you know, in as I've said, Chicago or Los Angeles, or the first Big Book came to Canada, my country, in a city called Winnipeg. And it came to Calgary. I know the story about how the Big Book got to my city. I'd love to share it with you sometime. I'm not going to get into it now, but imagine that you were just one person with just your book. Okay. That's the context I got to look at this at. So what they're saying, you know, because there's 100 sober alcoholics right now between Manhattan, Cleveland, and Akron. And they're saying, hey, you might be one person alone. It may be you're so situated that no person is really willing to hear your 5th step. You can postpone it if you like, as long as you're willing to go ahead and do it. Okay. I'm here to tell you that no longer applies to anyone on this call right now. Okay. I know someone who will do your 5th step with you. I personally will listen to your 5th step. If you want to do it with a woman, Paige from Monday night will listen to your 5th step. Okay, we are surrounded by dozens and dozens and dozens of people around the world in Alcoholics Anonymous who will listen to our 5th step. So all of this stuff about we may not be that no suitable person is available. Man, we are brothers and sisters. We are surrounded by people who are suitable to listen to our 5th step. That said, there's some important qualifications here. We want to talk to the right person. We need to make sure that they're able to keep a confidence. and that they fully approve what we're driving at and they will not try to change our plan. I am a big believer. I really sincerely believe that Fifth Steps should be heard by my sponsor. I think it's really important. I think it strengthens the sponsor-sponsee relationship. I think it strengthens my sponsor's ability to provide insight into my steps 8 and 9. And I think that there's a level of trust that is built. Plus, I think it provides another opportunity for a spiritual awakening for my sponsor when I do it with him. The other thing is that I've said this last week, I think a good step 5 ought to be a dialogue, not a monologue. Okay. And the most important parts of the 5th steps that I've received have been the feedback that I got. And I hear a lot about, people go to do it with clergy or other people. It's not just clergy, but the person like falls asleep basically during the 5th step. And I don't know that that's as effective as someone really listening, really participating, and really providing feedback on what I'm talking about and hearing me. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute when I tell you guys how I do a 5th step and what I've learned from listening to 5th steps. Some of the things that work really well and some of the things that I had to stop doing when I was listening to 5th steps because they were ineffective. So I'll share about some more of that in a minute. So one of the other things here, it doesn't give new sponsors a lot of direction in step 5 in the big book on how do we listen to a step 5? How do we receive a step 5? Okay. And there is some definite valuable suggestions I can make. And one of the directions, though, it does say here is that we are prepared for a long talk. Okay. This is not going to be just a casual chit chat. It says we are prepared for a long talk. Okay. The first step 5 that I did was 6 hours long. It took 6 hours. Okay. And I'll talk about the time frame of step 5s in a minute. But that's one of the main directions that it gives us is that it's going to be a long talk. So I think that's important to realize. In step 4 as well, it says, if you have been thorough, you have written down a lot. Okay. I think that that's a good touchstone as well. It's like if I've just made, scrawled a couple of notes on a piece of scrap paper, I've heard old timers, jokingly say like, yeah, you could do your step 4 on the back of a matchbook and then you just go get it done. You're a liar, you're cheating, a thief, and you're done with it. It's like, well, our book doesn't say that. Our book says we have written down a lot and that we are prepared for a long talk. And my step 4, when I read it, it says fearless and searching. Okay. Writing it on the back of a matchbook and having a 10-minute chat with someone doesn't sound very fearless and doesn't sound very searching. Am I alone in that? You guys agree? Okay. There's some work that we're going to do here, man. Okay. We're going to swallow some big chunks of truth about ourselves. Okay. And that's not easy to do. It's going to take a little bit of work and, but it's all right. The reward is worth it big time. So, and on that note, my man Vincent is going to read what we call the step 5 promises. Deb, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Kevin, it was important for me to know and understand what the real purpose of step 4 and 5. Can you just reiterate that for us, Kevin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I can point to a bunch of different things. Let's go to page 12 for a minute. Everybody go to page 12. This is Bill's story here. Okay, everybody go to Bill's story. Bill says here, he's having his the beginning of a spiritual awakening. Ebby Thatcher has just come to him and said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? And Bill Wilson says, the real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. So again, we're on step 12. He's talking about the Winchester Cathedral, where he sees the doggerel on an old tombstone in the front of the church. Bill says, for a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. Okay? There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. Great. Problem solved, right? Problem solved. Bill Wilson has God now. But soon The sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. That is the first indication of why I need to do steps for all of the steps. That's the purpose of the steps. The purpose of the 12 steps in my life has been to clear away those worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. If you guys will go to page 66 with me for a minute. Oh, actually, there's two places I want to show you. So let's go to page 64. This is in step 4, okay? And this is the great paradox that every alcoholic faces when I get to step 3, okay? I need God. My life depends upon having this spiritual awakening. I make this decision that I want God in my life. And the paradox is few people are more cut off from that power than alcoholics, selfish and self-centered in the extreme. When we look at page 64 here, it says, though our decision had been a vital and crucial step, what decision are they talking about? The decision we made in step 3. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us, is what it says. Things in ourselves that had been blocking us. Blocking us from what? What are we being blocked from? I'll give you a hint. It's a 3-letter word, starts with a G.
God.
G-O-D, baby. All right, we're getting blocked from God. That's why I need to do 4 and 5. So one more point here. On page 66, it says, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcoholism returns and we drink again, and with us to drink is to die. So why do I need to do steps 4 and 5? I need to do steps 4 and 5 to clear away the things within myself that have been blocking me, to clear away the things that are shutting me off from the sunlight of the sun, to quiet down the sunlight of the spirit, and to quiet down those worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. Okay. The way that I like to think about, the way I think about AA is like Wi-Fi. I'm sure some of you have heard me talk about this. I'm sure some of you are probably like, oh God, like gonna puke. Kevin's talking about the Wi-Fi again. But here's the deal. Okay. I think that God's power is like Wi-Fi. Okay. It's everywhere. It's all around us all the time. Okay. And for some people, it's really easy. For some people, it's really easy to get connected. Okay. And for some of us, we all know what it's like when you're stuck in the basement somewhere, or you're stuck in the parkade, or you're lost out in the wilderness. Okay. Like so many of us are when we get to AA. And we've got a bad connection, and God knows we're trying to dial in. That's what we're doing in steps 2 and 3, man. We're dialing in as hard as we can go. Okay. But what's the problem? The problem is not that the power's not there. The problem is that I don't have access to the power. I don't have access to the signal. And what needs to change? The fact that I can't get on, does that mean that God doesn't exist, or that God abandoned me, or that I'm not good enough for God? No, I have to change something about myself. And that's what we're doing in steps 4 and 5. Is that a good enough answer, Deb? Okay. All right. So now my man Vincent is going to read the step 5, what we call, I like to call them the step 5 promises. Okay. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get here. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of humility. Few steps are more ego smashing than step 5 in particular, especially if I'm going to be really thoroughly honest about it. You know, we talked about this last week. If there's, you know, that deep, dark thing that I'm keeping to myself, if there's a name for it, that means someone else has done it. If there's a law against it, that means so many people were doing it. They had to get the police to stop us from doing it. So it's okay. That thing that you think you're really special and unique, I guarantee you, man. I guarantee you, I've listened to over hundreds of step 5s. I can say, I guarantee you, there's nothing I haven't heard. Nothing I haven't heard. There's only so many things that human beings are capable of doing, even at our worst. So it's okay. It's okay. I thought I was public enemy number one. Turns out I was just a garden variety drunk. Okay. So takes a lot of work to get here, a lot of humility. Now we're going to see the reward. We're going to see the payoff. Okay. Vincent is going to read for us what we like to call the step 5 promises.
Thanks, Kevin. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look at the world. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone. Just a sec, I lost my place.
No, you're all right, Vince. Take your time, man.
We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe.
All right, that's brilliant, man. And that's where step 5 ends. Okay, that's where step 5 ends. Then there's kind of an in-between spot, some directions that we're going to talk about here in between steps 5 and steps 6 and 7, and then we'll go into step 6 and 7 tonight as well, with any luck. Wish me luck. Okay, but we'll try to get there. Okay, so 2 of the greatest promises in what Vince just read, and they're 2 that I think are really important. You know, you're not going to be able to recite chapter and verse all of the step 5 promises, but there's only 2 promises in my experience that you really need to hold on to and look for in your sponsees. Okay. And I think, you know, we see this happen in ourselves, but you know what? We don't see it happen in ourselves because you can't see it when it's happening. I can't see it when it's happening to me. It's easier to see happening to someone else. And there's 2 things that your sponsees will note. Number 1, they begin to feel the nearness of their Creator. Okay, why is that? It's because they're on the broad highway and they're driving closer to they're literally closer to the Creator. They're on the broad highway. They've left from where they were. They made that decision, and now they're traveling. Now they're traveling, and they begin to feel the nearness of their Creator because they are traveling on what they refer to here as the broad highway. Capital B, capital H. Broad highway, baby. I love it. I love it. Okay. I love signing off like AA. I'll be like, see you. Thanks for cruising on the broad highway with me. Right. We'll see you down the road we'll see you down the broad highway. Okay. I say that to AAs all the time. It's a great line. And that's the deal, is that we're literally closer to God because we are traveling this broad highway. We're traveling this path. Okay. So that's the first thing. Your sponsees are going to feel closer to God. The second is that the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will come strong. So if you can only hold 2 things from you to take away from the step 5 promises. Number 1, you're going to feel the nearness of your Creator. Number 2, the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. Okay. We're not fully restored to sanity yet. We don't get fully restored to sanity until step 10. But the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. That's a heck of a promise for an alcoholic. Okay. One of the other things about step 5 that I love is that it is the step where you can first start to see a physical change happen in alcoholics. You can see it, man. When someone comes into primary purpose group on a Wednesday night, you know, you can see there's a light in their eye, and they're holding their head a little bit higher, and their shoulders are a little bit straighter, and they're walking with a purpose, and they've got things to do. They've got chairs to set up, and they've got coffee to make, and they are lit up, and they are smiling, and there is God's light shining all over them. You can see it. You can tell when someone does a step 5. It's telltale. I've seen it many, many times. I like to believe that everyone knows where everyone is at in AA, man. If you believe in God and His infinite grace, you don't have to tell us. It'll show in your face. All right. I really, I believe that. And step 5 is where that really starts to happen. Okay. So now I want to talk briefly about listening to step 5s. Okay. What I like to call receiving step 5s. Okay. Because it's not just listening, it's like it's receiving in your heart and your soul and your mind, and then giving that feedback as well. What I used to do that I don't do anymore, and if anything, this is like a cautionary tale. Okay. I used to listen to step 5s, beginning, middle, and end, every little piece of them, the entire thing, the whole deal, the whole epic saga, every word, every line of a step 4. And man, it was taken up like 10 hours in a day and 11 hours on a Saturday and 12 hours. And, you know, really, there was some ego in it for me. I think I was just like, oh, is there no end to my goodness? Is there no end to the sacrifices that I'll make? You know, it was silly. It was silly, right? Like, 12 hours, like, come on. And then one time, here's what happened is one time I spent like 11 hours with this guy, listening to his whole step 5, the whole thing, all of it, like the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. And then at the end, I said to this guy, he's a sponsee of mine. I'd taken him through steps 1, 2, 3. We did all his step 4. We get to his 5, just spent 11 hours listening to his step 5. We get to the end. And I said, okay, now tell me the one thing that you held back that you were afraid to tell me. He said, I was afraid to tell you that I was drinking yesterday. Like, oh
gosh.
Okay, so that which is fine. We got him back on track, and that's all good. But that was at one of the points where now this is just me. If you talk to Paige on Monday nights, Paige will tell you she still does the whole thing. She listens to the whole thing, beginning, middle, and end. Some of my sponsees on this call will know I listen to them in 3-hour segments. That's all I can do. Mentally, emotionally, my capacity, that's all I can do. 3-hour segments. And if we need to book more, we'll book more. Usually on average, it's about 6 hours for the first one. It takes 2 3-hour slots. So I'll say that. That's just how I do it. Okay. And when we kick it off, we say a prayer, and we just invite God into the experience. And what I always say is, God, I ask you to be here. Thank you for this beautiful program. Thank you for these incredible steps and this wonderful life that we have, and that we might know you better. And God, I ask that you be here with Jeff or whoever it is, and that you fill him with your love and your grace and your courage, particularly when he has to speak about some of the more difficult things he's got to share today. And God, I ask that you be here with me today to help me to listen with love and understanding and compassion. Amen. And most importantly, we just ask that you be here with us today. Amen. Okay, that's how I kick it off. And then we let her rip. Okay. And that is, so one of the other things that I learned, and I learned this really from 2 people. One is named Scott Lee from Nashville, Tennessee. The other is named Myers Raymer from Dallas, Texas. And they both do the method that I'm going to share with you guys right now. Now, Rob, have you put it into the group chat already? No. Okay. Put it into the group chat, and then I want to talk about this. So this is different than just reading a 4th step. But in my experience, for a first time step 5, this is a very effective method. Okay. And so what I will do is simply ask, there's no one on the call named Jeff right now, so I'm going to keep going with the name Jeff for some reason. Jeff, I want you to tell me the worst thing that you've ever done. Okay. And then Jeff is going to tell me the worst thing he's ever done. And I'm going to tell Jeff, like, yeah, no big deal. I've done some similar stuff. Here's what happened for me. And then I want to ask him if he has any understanding of what defects of character led to that worst thing that he's ever done. Okay. And so now we're starting to bridge 6 and 7 into the 5 a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Well, I was very selfish and like very, very dishonest what I did, and very inconsiderate. And I was very self-centered, not considering anyone. Like, yeah, I agree. Okay, now tell me the next worst thing you've ever done. And he'll tell me the next worst thing that he's ever done. And I'll say, yeah, no big deal. I know, me too. Okay. And I've got lots of sponsees that have problems with that. And in fact, I can introduce you to one of them, and it's okay. And here's kind of how it worked for me and what defects of character are tied to that. Okay. Oh, selfish, self-centered, dishonest, fearful, inconsiderate, whatever it might be. Okay. All right. Now tell me the next worst thing you've ever done. He tells me the next worst thing he's ever done. And I say, oh my God, you're kidding. Get out of my car. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. No. Okay. We don't do that, obviously. Okay. And that's it, man. And here's the miracle of it. This cat has sat around for 10, 15, 20 years thinking that the things that they have done are unforgivable, are making them subhuman, and a lifetime of horrible bad deeds. Do you know how long it takes typically? On average, about 45 minutes. On average, about 45 minutes for a person. And I mean, I've listened to some dudes, man, I listened to one not long ago. You know how I just said, like, I hadn't heard anything new in a while? I heard some new stuff. Okay. But here's the thing. If I listen, I remember this is years ago. I talked to a guy who I will say he committed every one of the 10 commandments. Every one of them. He broke every one of the 10 commandments. Every one of them, including taking a human life. He did that. Okay, this guy. And we talked, okay, what defects of character were involved in that? And he said, well, I was worried. I was part of a gang in Montreal, and I was really worried about what my friends were going to think if I didn't do this thing. Like, I'd been lined up to do it, and I was really worried. So let me ask you this question. Anybody here ever done something you shouldn't have done because you were worried about what other people think? Raise your hand. It's the great alcoholic obsession. We're obsessed. So I was able to say to this guy, like, look, man, maybe I've never let the dog off the leash quite the same way that you did, but I know I'm certainly guilty of the same crime, man, right? Ultimately, the root cause, and that's one of the things that when we talk about steps 6 and 7, we're going to talk about the root of our trouble. What is the root of our trouble? Okay. So now that's what we do. And I promise you, if you try this, when you listen to a step 5, now tell me the next worst thing you've ever done. And tell me the next worst thing you've ever done. And tell me that there's only so many next worst things that a person can do. And it will just naturally just kind of run its course. And there will be a divine moment where you will realize there's nothing else. At which point I engage the rest of these questions. Now, Rob put them in the chat. I'm going to read them to you. I understand that some of these might seem a little bit out there, okay? But some of this stuff it's important to ask the question, and I will tell you that I have had an affirmative response to every question on this list. And in that moment where that individual was willing to get honest with me about that answer, might be the time that we saved his life, because he was in so much guilt or shame about what he had done, okay? So number 1, have you ever physically assaulted someone? 2, have you ever taken someone's life? 3, have you ever committed a crime that went unknown? 4, do you have any warrants out for your arrest? 5, have you ever committed a criminal sexual act? 6, have you ever had sex with a family member? And 7, have you ever had sexual contact with an animal? Okay, now, I know some of that might sound a little crazy, but I'm here to tell you again, I've had an affirmative answer to every question on that list. And the moment that someone was willing to get honest with me, that is the moment that they were set free. They were set free from the bondage of self. And those are the questions exactly the way that Scott Lee and Myers Raymer both told me to write them down. And that's what I do. And that's how I listen to a step 5. Okay. Then I will go back to step 4, and I want to listen to, I don't know if we talked about this. I use this language with my sponsees a lot. I'll talk about nickels and dimes, and I'll talk about $50 bills. Okay. When we do a step 4, nickels and dimes are all just those little petty resentments and all this stuff. But The $50 bill are the big ones, okay? The big resentments that we have. And it's kind of the 80-20 rule. 80% of all the resentment I have comes from 20% of those $50 bills. You guys with me on that? You understand what I'm saying? So what I want to do with my sponsees then is I will go and listen to their top 5 resentments, their top 5 $50 bills, if you will, of resentments, their top 5 $50 bills of fear, and then I'll listen to the top 5 $50 bills of sex conduct. But 90% of the time, I've already heard the worst of the worst in their sex conduct. When I ask them the question, tell me the worst thing you've ever done. Because for most of us, it seems to be the worst thing we've ever done has been in the realm of sex, which is again, why we need to talk about it. We all have sex problems. We would hardly be human if we didn't, okay? And we have to get out of that guilt and that shame. I had to, I promise you I had to, okay? So that's what I do. Why do I do the top 5 resentments and the top 5 fears? I do that because I want to make sure they understand how the tool works, okay? It's a spiritual toolkit that we are given in step 4. And if I'm going to continue to take inventory in step 10, I darn well better be well versed in taking inventory in the first place. So I want to make sure that they know off the top of their head. If I said to you, you know, tell me what's in column 3, step 4 resentments. What's in there? What is it? We should all be hitting the buzzer like, bah, affects my, okay? And for the bonus round, affects what? Okay? Affects my self-esteem, emotional security, physical security, financial security, ambition, personal, and sex relations. We should all know that inside and out. Why? Number 1, so I can use that tool myself. But what's the other reason? What's the other reason, guys? What's the other reason that I should have that stuff memorized? Because I ought to be working with so many blessed newcomers. I'm taking 5 guys through their step 4 at any given time. Okay? That's why I know this stuff. I know this stuff because I'm taking multiple dudes through this stuff all the time. That's just how it is. Okay? And so that's what I want to know. I want to make sure they know how the tool works. And the other thing is most of the time when they get to column 4 and I say, where are you to blame? And they explain to me where they're to blame, they're nowhere near understanding it yet. And so we got to talk through it a little bit. We got to help them to understand, where are you actually to blame? Where I think I'm to blame and where my sponsor tells me I'm to blame are completely different things. Okay? Because a sponsor can give me judgment and clarity without any emotion attached to whatever my ideas are. Okay? When we talk about the fear inventory, I want to go through their top 5 fears and I want to make sure they know how that tool works. Okay? Column 1. Column 1, what am I afraid of? Column 2, why am I afraid? Column 3, how is self-reliance failing me in terms of this fear? Say the prayer between column 3 and column 4. God, please move my fear of this situation of whatever it might be and direct my attention towards what you would have me be. What would God have us be? Love and service, baby. Love and service. Love, service. All right? That's it. Love and service. And if you can't be loving, at least be of service. Okay? It's my sponsor tells me, man, it is more important that I be useful than I be happy. Okay? He's not interested in me being happy. He's interested in me being useful. Okay? Because he knows something. He knows that being useful makes me happy. He knows that. But being happy doesn't always make me useful. Does it? No. Okay? So then I say that prayer, then column 4. How would fully relying on God and trusting him and doing his will remove the fear? Okay? It's like working out at the gym, man. I gotta flex that muscle a little bit. I gotta flex the step 4 resentment, the 4 column resentment inventory. I gotta flex that muscle, and it gets stronger. Okay, and it becomes like reflexive. Okay, that is like my default that I just start to use. Okay, and then same thing with the fear inventory. It's like I have that imprinted in my head. Yes, I think it's important to do. I've got my notebook around here. Yes, it's important to do written inventories. Yes, but in those moments when I can't, okay. And what happens is my default thinking now, it almost, I see the world through column 4 all the time in a lot of ways. You guys, any of you other old timers know what I mean? Like I see the world through where am I to blame, which doesn't mean I'm full of guilt and on the back foot all the time, but I see the world some days on my better days, man. I see the world in this thing. It's really hard to explain. It's a very hard concept for alcoholics to understand. It's what grown-ups refer to as reality. Reality. I don't know. It's a new concept in AA, but it's tough. It's hard to understand for most drunks. Reality. Okay. Highly recommended. It's marvelous. It's I've never been higher on any drug than I have on on reality, believe me. Anyway, so let's on that note, guys, let's go to page 75. Okay, and this is really, this is kind of a place in between. I like to think of this next paragraph as in between step 5 and steps 6 and 7. Okay, there's kind of a transition here on what we're going to do, what Bill is going to suggest we do here. Okay, and so Vince, will you be kind enough to read the paragraph for us, please?
Yes, thanks, Kevin. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything, for we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can He now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. When ready, we say something like this: My
Okay,
Creator.
So I'm going to, I'm just going to pause you there. And I actually, I let you get ahead a little bit there, Vince. What I wanted to talk about is just that paragraph. What do we do? What do we do between column 3 and column 4? And I was trying to look for something that I had, researched before that I thought was just really funny, and I was going to share it with you guys. Okay, in any event, what Bill is saying here when he says go home and read the first 5 proposals, what's he saying? He's saying go home and read the first 5 steps. Okay, and ask myself, is there anything that's missing here? Is there any part of the physiology and mental obsession in step 1 that am I still balking at that? Do I really believe I'm an alcoholic? Like, yes. Okay. Step 2, any part of me not into the God thing? Have I not fully come to believe that there is a God? Okay, I'm not saying I've got to have the most incredible relationship. Just, do I believe? Yes. Is there any part of me that wants to keep trying to do it my own way, or am I willing to surrender to God's will in step 3? Okay, is there any part of me that's balking that, like, no, I'm gonna hand this over. I'm gonna keep doing it His way. And then 4 and 5. I think a lot of times we read that and we think, did I leave anything out of my step 4? It's like, no, that's not what it says. It says to read the first 5 proposals and make myself, because we're building an arch through which we shall walk a free person after this. Okay. By the way, what happens? What do you do if you get to the end and you read that and you're like, oh man, I did actually leave some stuff out of my step 4 and 5. I didn't mean to, but what do I do about that? Okay, well, I'll tell you what happened for me. I did my step 5 and I was honest and thorough as I could be. And then a couple weeks later, some other stuff, I like to think I scraped like the top layer of goo off, and then some other stuff bubbled up from the surface that I had not even really recognized. And I called my sponsor. I said, Gary, what do I do? He said, Kevin, I'll be right over. You got to get rid of that stuff. It'll kill you. And so that's it. As soon as you become aware of it, just go and go talk about it. I'm looking, give me a moment, because this is just, it was so funny when I found it. I really, it made me laugh. I asked ChatGPT, just give me indulge me a minute. I'm gonna try to find this. I asked, maybe I'll just ask again. Yeah, so this line, this classic line, have we tried to make mortar without sand? If you ask ChatGPT, what happens if you make mortar without sand? It says it lacks strength, is difficult to work with, and has poor integrity. That's funny, just like most alcoholics I know, okay? It lacks strength, is difficult to work with, and has low integrity. That's funny to me. That was funny. Okay, so we're gonna skip over now. And Vince just read it, but now, so that's what we do. And my sponsor recommends, Kevin, take the hour. I will recommend to all of you, you take the hour. Okay, take the hour, recommending from the bottom of your heart that you know God better. Thanking God from the bottom of your heart that you know God better. That's an action, that's a prayer there. It says, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. We take the book down and we read through the first 5 proposals, take some time and absorb, you know, everything that that happened. I was just reminded of the power of step 5 myself, just like 3 weeks ago. I did another step 5 with my sponsor, and I think I told you guys, man, it was transformational. It was great. So now we're getting into step 6, okay? And as Vince said, we've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing. Okay, that's pretty simple. If we're still clinging to something, we ask God to help us be willing. But here's the problem. I had no idea what my defects of character were. Rob, I'm gonna text something else to you if you'd be kind enough to yeah, I'm gonna text this to you. And maybe you can just throw it up on the board for us. Throw it up in the chat. When I finished my first step 5 with Father Brian, he said, Kevin, do you know what your defects of character are? And I started to list off like the 97 things that I thought were wrong. Okay. And I had no idea what my defects of character were. And in that moment, Father Brian gave me one of the keys to the kingdom of God. Okay. And when he told me, Kevin, just keep it simple. You are selfish and you are self-centered. And if you will invite God into your life on a daily basis to remove those defects from you, every other defect that you have will come from those defects. And if you attack them at the root, everything else will be well. Okay. And my grand sponsor Clancy talks about that. You know, I've got a lemon tree. He says, I have a lemon tree in the back of my house, in my backyard. And when I want the lemons to grow, I don't get up on an individual ladder and go water each individual lemon up in the tree, do we? No. We go water the root. Well, what is the root of our trouble? Go to page 62. Okay. And this is key. And if no one's connected these dots for you, let me please be the first. Okay. On page 62, where it says selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. If there's any confusion about what my defects of character are, that's it. If there's any confusion about what my shortcomings are, that's it. Okay? This is the root of our troubles. Now, I am fully willing to concede that a lot of other defects of character are going to sprout out of those 2 defects. Okay? And we're going to talk about some of them now. Can you guys see this board any better today? I'm going to do my best, guys. We'll be done at 10 after 7 today. Okay.
Kevin, that item that you sent me is in a
Yes.
format that will not transmit.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. All I was sending you was I had another sponsee who went and did a step 5 with another guy, and he just gave him like this laundry list of all these defects that he was gonna that he was meant to learn about and to figure out. And it's like, good luck, man. You know, I needed to keep it simple, okay? So Father Brian told me my defects are, I'm selfish, self-centered. Way that I think about selfishness and self-centeredness. Selfishness are my actions. Self-centeredness is my thinking. And what am I thinking about? This guy. Okay, I am thinking about myself. And self-centeredness, guys, I used to think a lot that self-centeredness had a lot to do with ego. That like, oh, he really thinks well of himself. He's so vain, he's so egotistical, he's so self-centered. And that's not the case. Actually, guys, a lot of the time, my self-centeredness is a lot more about me sitting at home alone thinking about what a piece of garbage I am. Okay, that is self-centeredness in a more serious way, actually. Okay, that type of selfishness and self-centeredness is very, very toxic and leads to another defect. Okay, and guys, when with myself and with my sponsees, I like to talk about the big five defects that I work with my sponsees on. Selfishness and self-centeredness are the root. These next three come from these two. Okay, the next one is dishonesty. And fear. And the last one, and one that is an absolute killer for me, self-pity. Okay, these are the five that I work on with my sponsees: selfish, self-centeredness, dishonesty, fear, and self-pity. Okay, and I think that step 6 for me, guys, a lot of what step 6 is about is awareness. Okay, there's a fine line between being selfishness and being self-centered, and then being spiritually and gracefully self-aware, okay, about what I'm doing and how I'm behaving. And almost having that observer experience, getting outside of my own mind and looking at how am I thinking and how am I behaving? And is my thinking, my behaving selfish, self-centered, dishonest, fearful, or filled with self-pity? Okay, and when I get tangled up throughout the day, I need to ask myself, you know, am I afraid right now? Am I feeling off because I was dishonest about something? Am I filled with self-pity? Just wrapping myself in the warm blanket of self-pity. Okay, brutal, okay? So I think that step 6, a lot of what 6 is about, I need to become entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. The first thing I need to do in order for me to be ready to have them removed is to be aware of them, to admit that I have them, and to see how they're manifesting in my life, and realize in that moment, that pause, oh, this is fear. I'm in fear right now. Then I can apply the tool. Oh, I'm feeling resentful right now. I can apply the tool. Okay. And what I want to do, what I want to teach you guys right now, is something that I do, that I like to practice. I practice this, I can say, every day. And I teach this to all my sponsees, and what I'm going to teach you right now is one of the keys to the kingdom of God for me, when it was all taught to me. I'm going to teach this to you, and then we are going to read step 7. We are going to do the step 7 prayer together, and then we will be done for the night. Okay? So these are character defects or shortcomings. Okay? And one of the things that I believe and I've learned is that what I focus on and what I give my attention to, isn't it like a spiritual law that what I focus on and give my attention to actually magnifies? When we put it under the microscope, it like sometimes can become worse. And so what I've seen in my own life and in other people's is like, they just walk around like focusing on like, you know, focusing on my selfishness, my self-centeredness, my dishonesty, my fear, my self-pity. Okay, and resentment and anger, of course, comes from this as well. Okay, and all that stuff, and they're focusing on it all the time. And what we do sometimes is focus on like, you know, I'm going to fix it myself. We forget that God is the one who's supposed to remove it. It's like, you know, you go to step 6. Topic tonight is step 6. Oh yeah, I'm working on my anger right now. Oh yeah, good. How's that going? None of your goddamn business how it's going. You know, right? Like, yeah. and we forget that the real deal is that God is supposed to remove these for us, but God can't remove them until I'm aware of them. And obviously, oftentimes, I can become aware of them. It's so beautiful how AA works, man, because sometimes I can become ready to have these removed when I start working with a newcomer and I start seeing him living in self-pity, or the impact of him living in selfishness and self-centeredness. And I think, my God, is that what I look like? Is that, oh my God, that's horrible. So beautiful. It doesn't always have to be from the pain of me just going through these things. It's really remarkable how that can happen, okay? But one of the things about these defects of character, we focus on them, and sometimes, my grand sponsor Clancy says that inventory sometimes can become a publicly acceptable form of self-obsession, okay? And I've seen people just become obsessed with step 6 and 7. It used to be that step 6 and 7 were called the forgotten steps. And I think it's almost gone like the other way now, where people are they're spending years on 6 and 7. It's like, do you know the best place for me to learn about step 6 and 7? We're going to talk about it next week because it's actually in steps 8 and 9, okay? But I'm going to tell you about that next week. Stay tuned. Tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of the 12 steps. All right. So listen, guys, sorry, stay with me, please. If these are defects of character, is there a way that I can turn these defects into assets? Is there a way, rather than focusing on the negative, if I can learn to focus on what I like to call the positive opposite of each one of these, okay? And that's what I've started doing years ago. And I really got this from the St. Francis prayer on page 99 in the 12 and 12, right? Where there is hatred, may I bring love. Where there is discord, may I bring harmony. Where there is selfishness, may I bring selflessness. All right, okay, that's a good start. So I started asking myself, all right, well, what would these other ones be then? Well, some of them are easy. Okay, the opposite of dishonesty, that's pretty easy, right? I'm going to be honest. I'm going to focus on, do you see the difference, guys, between me focusing on not being dishonest and me focusing on learning to be honest? I am an honest person. Say that. I'm an honest person. Try saying that. I'm an honest person. There's a feeling that I get when I say I'm an honest person. Okay? It becomes the truth, and it becomes it becomes easier not to tell lies, because lies just fall out of my mouth. I started lying straight out of the womb. Okay, like I don't know why. I'm just born that way. I don't know what it is, man. Okay, so now it gets a little more in depth. So let's talk about fear. What's the opposite of fear? Some people would say it's courage. And some people would say it's faith. Whatever you want, it's fine. For me, it's trust. Trust is not something that alcoholics do well. And who am I trusting? G to the OD, baby. Okay, that's the antidote to fear. We trust. What does our book say, brothers and sisters? We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. Okay? Just to the extent that we trust God and do as he would have us, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. Okay? Trust is a weapon against fear. Fear knocked on the door, trust answered, and no one was home. All right? You see what I'm saying? So, trust is the opposite of fear. Now, self-centeredness. What is the opposite of self-centeredness? I'm going to give you a hint. The word that we're looking for here is actually in step 7. So if you look at step 7, the word that is the opposite of self-centeredness is in step 7. Anybody want to venture a guess? And I saw unmute yourself, say it.
Humility.
Oh, I was gonna
Oh
say,
yeah. Did he just beat you to it, Dan?
no, I was going for useful. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. There's a lot of similarity between usefulness and humility. Who said humility?
Rob.
Anyway, thank you very much for saying that because you nailed it. That's great. Yeah, because here's the thing about humility. Okay. And in the step 7 and the 12 and 12, it says humility. A lot of us like make a mess of humility. My problem is I kept trying to humble myself in front of other people. I kept trying to like pretend like I was a humble person. I kept trying to look like a humble person. Okay. I just wanted you all to think that I was really spiritual and humble. Okay. We don't humble ourselves before human beings in Alcoholics Anonymous. We humble ourselves before the incredible, awesome power of God and nothing else. Okay. And as God would have it, when I am humbled before him and I fully rely on him and do his will, man, what do you know? I become a much easier person to be around. Okay. And I start to make more friends and all that good stuff starts to happen. Okay. Where I was trying to like be humble in front of other people to manipulate them into thinking I was, a good person. Okay. In any event, guys, the opposite of self-centeredness is humble, because another way of saying humble, another way to think about it is to be God-centered. Page 25 in our book says the central fact of our lives is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. Is that the central fact of my life? If so, I am a humble person. We're humble before God, okay? And lastly, guys, if no one has ever told you this, let me be the one. Let me be the one to tell you. There's an absolute weapon against self-pity. This is one of the most important lessons I learned in all of AA. What is the antidote to the poison of self-pity? And that, my friends, is gratitude. It is impossible for me to feel self-pity and gratitude at the same time. Okay? It's an absolute weapon against self-pity. So, brothers and sisters, when I practice steps 6 and 7, on it, which is a daily affair with me, okay, I say this prayer every morning. God, please grant that I may be honest and humble and grateful, selfless and trusting of your will for me. Okay, that's one of the prayers I say in the morning. And that's my step 7 prayer. We're going to read the step 7 prayer because it's also awesome. Okay. But this, God, please grant that I may be honest, humble, grateful, selfless, and trusting of your will for me today, God. Okay. And that's how I practice step 6 and 7. And I hope some of that is valuable for you as we all continue cruising on down the broad highway. Okay. So now let's go to the step 7 prayer. And we're going to finish up here, guys. And then everyone, please stick around. It's my favorite thing in the world. Everyone knows it's my favorite thing in the world. Everyone's going to unmute yourselves. We're going to go around the room and everyone's going to introduce yourselves and let us know. Literally, it's my favorite thing in the world. You're going to let us know where in the world you are tonight, where you're dialing in from. So the step 7 prayer, I'm gonna read it, and then we're gonna there's a couple things I want to share about it, and then we'll say it together. Okay. So the step 7 prayer says, when we're ready, we say something like this: my Creator, I am now willing you should have all of me, good and bad. Well, wait a minute. Why do I want to give God the good and the bad? I don't want him to take the good. I just want him to take the bad and I'll manage the good. Okay. How about that? No, it doesn't work that way, man. This is about surrender. Complete, total, unquestioning surrender to God. All of it. You take all of it, God. Take the good, take the bad. I don't know what's good, man. I don't know what's good. I don't know what's bad. Okay, God, I need you to help me with this. Okay, and God will let me know. And what's good, he's gonna polish it up. He's gonna give it back to me, and I'll be able to use it better in the first place. Okay. Now he says, I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. I just want to point out, guys, once again, this is so important to understand that the AA is not a something for nothing deal. Okay. We have a new employer. He provides what we need if I keep close to him and perform his work well. Okay. What does the step 3 prayer say? Take away my difficulties. Why? Because I'm such a swell guy and God should get up on his tippy toes and make the universe cool for Kevin? No. Take away my difficulties. That victory over them will bear witness to those that I will help. God, you do this for me, I go to work for you. That's the deal. When we do step 3 at my home group, we all get down on our knees together. We say the step 3 prayer together. Guy or gal says it in their own words, and then we have a custom. Who do you work for now? The answer? G to the OD, baby. That's who we work for now. Okay. In step 7 prayer right here, it says, remove these defects of character. Why? Because they're standing in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Okay. God, you take away these defects and I go to work for you. That's how this works. Okay. So that's all I wanted to say, guys. I love teaching this study, man. I'm so grateful to you guys for being here, and I'm going to get down on my knees. Let's all say the step 7 prayer. I recommend you all unmute yourselves. And then as I say, don't run away, because we're going to say a quick round of hellos. Okay. So when ready, guys, when ready, we say something like this. My Creator, I'm now willing to worship all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me
every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness
To you and my
to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go up from here to do your bidding. Amen.
Amen.
And then it says, we have then completed step 7. We've completed it for that moment, for right now, and right now is a whole new opportunity to work 7 again. Okay. When it says we have completed it, it only means for that moment in time. Okay. This is a lifetime job. There can be no argument about that. 6 and 7 are a lifetime deal. So don't get hung up on them. This is a program of action. We are meant to go through 6 and 7 quickly. It says to take an hour. And what happens at the end of the hour? We get a pen and a piece of paper again. And what are we writing out? Step 8 list. Okay. That's what we're doing. Okay. Love you lots, guys. Let's close with the serenity prayer.